this is right. I mean, they're abandoning their power in fear of the president. Do they want to get primaried by someone in their next
like that's
round of
the
elections?
worst thing in the world?
Yeah, well, apparently it is.
But for Trump, it's fast, it's dirty, and so far it's effective.
Yeah.
He's daring the world to stop him, just like he has his entire life, and they're not stopping him. So he's going to continue to push the pace. He's going to continue to go outside the box. He's going to continue to blow things up and use Musk and anything else he can to further his radical, extreme agenda of taking over the government and snatching the levers of power. And we should be really watching when he says, I'm going for the military. He's right. He went with Hegseth first. He's going for the Pentagon first, because when you break into a house and take it over, you go for the gun closet first. He knows the military is the most powerful. He knows it's the most influential. It's the biggest employer. It's got the biggest budget, and it's got the guns. So that's where he's going first, and he's leading his entire strategy with and at the Pentagon.
Is he not concerned, though, that he will lose support from his voters, right? When you heard about why people were voting for Donald Trump, right, whether it was they were tired of wokeness, or it was immigration, or it was inflation, I didn't hear anybody saying, let's take down the Pentagon.
I don't think he cares about that. I don't think he cares about the midterms either, because he's thinking about what he's going to do right now and in the next 6 months. And I think that's where the Democrats are flat-footed. They're talking about the midterms. Think about all he can do in the next 30 days. So he may not even care about the midterms and wants to go for a third term. He talked about that today. So he's not abiding by any norms, any regulations, any guardrails, because they're not stopping him.
Doesn't seem like a voter-oriented mentality. That's really not, I think, what's on their mind. What's on their mind is like, we're going to do what we're going to do, and no one's going to stop us, and we're going to establish that dominance, and that's the game.
Yep.
I don't think that it's just Democrats that are flat-footed. I think Republicans are flat-footed too. Because even though he said, I'm going to do all these things, and Elon Musk said, we're going to do all these things, I don't think they really anticipated that they meant it and that they were going to do it this haphazardly and this quickly.
I think they're compliant. I mean, they're a part of this. I mean, they're enablers and facilitators, and some of them are along for the ride all the way to the top.
I just don't think they expected it.
They're also scared.
Some of them help plan it.
Name one person in Congress, honestly, who has the guts to go toe-to-toe against Elon Musk or Donald Trump. One person. One Republican.
The only one we saw that surprised us was Mitch McConnell voting against Hegseth. And now he's fallen down a couple of times since, and he might not be around for long. But, we're going to find unlikely opposition, and we got to take it where we can get it. And Mitch McConnell, one vote away, they could have stopped Hegseth. None of this is normal. None of it's inevitable. You can't just give up everything.
Mitch McConnell, if he thought that his vote was going to decide that, he would have voted the other way.
He's no John McCain.
No, he's no John McCain.
He wasn't pulling
but we can't give up every fight and just assume that they're always going to fall. I mean, every fight, they got to fight for every inch, and now they got to do the same with Gabbard, and they got to do the same with Kennedy. And that's going to be the new norm.
I'm just saying, forgive me for being cynical about Mitch McConnell.
Oh, I'm cynical about all.
Yes, ma'am.
See, you don't have to search. We know that there was hundreds of billions in fraud from the PPP loan program during COVID. Why not take the DOGE efforts and say, we're going to go after that?
Because it doesn't further their agenda. I mean, they want to go for the heart of the government and take the levers of power. That's why they're starting with Treasury. That's why they're starting with Defense. They've just started to get their claws into the Department of Veterans Affairs, which should alarm everybody, because they've got medical data. They know where people are buried. They know who got abortions at the VA. And it's also a massively large agency that can change culture and employs hundreds of thousands of people. So they're going for the heart first, because they want to take custody of all of it. Then they can get to PPP and education and everything else. That's going to be easy once you take down the Pentagon.
I really don't know what it's about. It's very difficult to find, if you'll pardon the expression, the intellectual underpinnings of looking at trade through this prism.
It's about power. It's about power. I mean, tariffs are an economic weapon. He wants to use that economic weapon the same way he wants to threaten Panama and Greenland and anyone else using the military. It's for him all about influence, power, intimidation, and pushing forward his agenda.
But isn't it also about misinformation? Because we can all sit here and say, oh, well, Canada and Mexico rolled him. They offered him things on Monday that were already laying around the house. But we live in an age of misinformation and parts of this country that are absolute news deserts. So you hear Donald Trump still bantering, there were tariffs around. There are huge portions of this country that have no idea that nothing happened with Mexico and Canada, that have no idea that he's not really doing anything significant.
I mean, I don't know if you guys at Msnbc know this. Most people don't watch the news. It's going to affect people's prices more or less immediately. A lot of this other stuff, like, they're not going to see the impact. When they do, I think it'll make a difference.
When they see it is when he starts laying off federal workers.
Yeah.
Right now, 30% of federal workers are veterans. This impacts every community in America. It wasn't the Democrats that stopped that. It's the average American person who stood up and said, "Hey, that's my friend, that's my father, that's our family." That's when he kind of hits a guardrail. The only guardrail he's hit so far is the American people, and he hits it hard when he does things like laying off 1% of the entire federal workforce.
So how will members of the military, right? He's gotten a lot of support from the military community. How are they going to respond to this?
He's gotten some support from the military. I mean, he gets support from the military the same way he gets the support in America. It's a divided group. The military,
from that group, who
right now,
stands with
the
it?
disruption is what I think concerns people most of all, but also beneath the headlines. The culture war is focused on and starting at the Pentagon. So Pete Hegseth also today decided he was going to start banning books at Department of Defense schools. He's rolling back DEI. He says it's DOD, not DEI. Everything that they want to do in America is starting at the Pentagon. And we're hoping that the military can hold the line. The FBI might be the next line of defense. But most of the military inside is trying to push back in whatever way they can and follow orders at the same time. But they can't just we can't just depend on them alone to save our democracy. It's got to be everyone else, too.
I read a Thomas Jefferson quote this week that he said if the choice were to have a president or a free press, he would go with a free press.
That's why he's going for the free press. I mean, he wants to take it down because he knows how valuable it is. And they continue to consolidate and expand their megaphone of propaganda. I think that Twitter and X is the model. It worked for them, and they're going to keep doing it. I mean, there's a scenario where Musk could try to buy this network and buy anything else that gets in their way because they want to continue to consolidate the messaging, drive the narrative, and reach people directly without having to go through any kind of editorial content or any type of journalism integrity.
There are certain structural impediments as part of the deal as our networks are being spun off of our parent company, Comcast. It would take him at least 3 years to make that move.
Doesn't mean he won't try.
Okay, but let's
That's
talk
a long-term
about
play. It's worth it for him.
Has been, putting little videos on YouTube calling for the overturning of Sullivan versus New York Times. And so this comes from this, it doesn't come, but it's being propagated on the podcast.
But it's all the same playbook, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they pick a target, they rally the horde, they use their machine, and they beat it to death. It could be the NFL, it could be Bud Light, it could be an opposition politician. Right now, it's USAID. And when something else pops up in a week, they're going to sick the horde on that, too. And they continue to take things down one by one. And USAID is an incredibly valuable part of America's soft power. The best week of all was probably for Putin. I mean, he's sitting back loving this. Every week is great for Putin when he sees America's alliances destroyed, our soft power annihilated, our politicians fighting with our military. Every week our enemies are celebrating. But Trump's going to keep calling this play because for him so far it's been working.
I think instructionally, we'll go back to of the elimination of the flock of chickens that produce eggs. People are stealing eggs now. I don't know if you saw that story.
Yeah, in Pennsylvania, 100,000 eggs stolen.
Yeah, and this, but the complicated element of this, right? It's buried. The lead is buried completely in the reality. Everybody just still thinks it's some inflation problem that came from government spending after the pandemic. It had nothing to do with it.
But he's moved on from the eggs. Like the Democrats are still crying about the eggs. He's moved on to USAID. So the distractionary tactic sometimes works, but even more so, he's moving faster and harder than they can keep up.
Hold on, he can move on egg prices because Joe Rogan, he doesn't think about egg prices. But Louise Ruhle and all these other women who go to the grocery store 3 times a week and talk about grocery prices, it doesn't matter who's in office. They're going to be angry with that president, whomever it is.
Right, but when are they going to express that anger? 2 years from now? 4 years from now? How much damage can he do between now and then? That's what he's focused on. Again, Democrats and everybody's still focused on the midterms and focused on...
Okay,
we need to have a strategy for now.
He is underestimating the loyalty of the average American who can't stand any government because they care about the price of rent and the price of insurance, and they sure as hell care about the price of London broil. The people who believe it are people who already did not vote for Donald Trump, despised him, and thought he was a threat to democracy. But do any additional people think that?
I think for a lot of people that sounded like word salad coming from the Democratic Party. Yeah. It just sounds too complicated. I think, no, you can't depend on the courts because the Republicans planned ahead and they've got that locked up, too, at the Supreme Court, too. So I'm not counting on, on Justice Thomas or anybody else. But I do think you're cutting to a larger point. America is starved for leadership. And whether it's, Ellen Weintraub or it's Angus King, I don't think it's going to be an 80-year-old, senator from Maine. But everybody is starved for a voice that will come and punch back and hit Trump. And I think they're looking for new voices. And I don't know where they're going to emerge, but I'm looking at the FBI right now because that might be the next line of defense. We know that General Milley was an example last time at the Department of Defense. New leaders are going to rise, and I think America is starving for them and looking for them right now.
Hold on. You know, you said something interesting. You said America is looking for someone to punch back. And I'm feeling all night that you're angry with Democrats. I'm feeling like you're angry with Democrats. Hold on.
That's not news.
Hold on.
Yeah.
But that they're sort of scattered all over the place. And do you think part of it is Democrats' insistence on being so careful and so inclusive and making sure every T is crossed and every I is dotted, they're missing the opportunity to punch between the eyes, which is the only thing that they can do right now?
I think the bottom line is that Democrats won't save us. They didn't save us in the election. They haven't saved us over the last couple of years, and we can't put all our eggs in that basket. We need alternate strategies. That's why I support independent candidates. That's why I'm supporting independent voices. We need activists. We need people from within. And we can't just sit here and wait for the Democrats to all of a sudden start winning, put together a strategy, identify a leader, because Trump's rolling. I think the hope I have is in the American people and new leadership rising up who can challenge him in every way, shape, or form.
Baby boy, what does that look like?
I think it looks
I mean, like, I hear you,
did you
but
just
like,
say that?
yeah, but I'm like, yeah. And then I'm like, but what, like, literally,
Think
when
about
I
how many
eyes,
people
yes.
the country has looked, especially the left, has looked for, whether it was Mueller or Jack Smith or Tish James. Like, there's so many people that the country is looking for to rise. I mean, we've had pieces of it. I think AOC has glimpses of it at times. She's very dynamic. She's all over the culture. You and I have talked about Wes Moore. I think he's a powerful, positive voice that can push back. But nobody's really coalesced around leadership yet. And I think that's starting to happen, especially in the streets and in the grassroots, where it always comes from.
It can be elected. It doesn't have to be elected. But yeah, I would really like to see people just stepping up and taking shots. And what's good is that with social media, like, you don't have to get booked on TV to do it.
This is a great point. Anthony, what do you think?
I don't think that we need somebody like a Barack Obama, some like generational transformative figure, but
say that about, but I think if they spoke with one voice,
I think they're looking for courage. They're looking for courage, not partisanship. I mean, look at someone like Colonel Vindman when he stepped forward, like widely celebrated. Even somebody going back to the Iraq War like Cindy Sheehan. They're looking for courageous people to step forward and speak truth about what this country is facing and in opposition to Trump. And I do think every week we're going to see more and more of them start to rise.
And a good story, like a narrative that is exciting to them and makes sense.
Someone they can root
narrative?
for.
What?
He's going to have to tell you in the commercial.
Okay.
That's
Well,
He did.
I have a different kind of football story, and I think a true American hero, 10-year-old Trey Howard.
Oh, yes.
We all saw the tragic plane crash in Philadelphia, the medical plane. Well, when that plane crashed, there was a family going to get donuts, and Trey Howard was in a car with his family, and he laid on top of his siblings to save their lives.
A 10-year-old
boy, tremendous heroism. He got fragments in his head. He was in a coma, and when he woke up, he said, "Daddy, did I save my sister?" And he did save his sister. And his dad said, "Daddy, I'm a celebrity." He said, "No, you're bigger than that. You're a superhero." And with all the chaos going on, Mr. Rogers used to say, "Look for the helpers."
Look for the help.
The people who are running in when they're running out. Trey Howard, 10 years old, and he's an Eagles fan. He wanted to know if the game had happened while he was unconscious. It hasn't happened yet, but he's my MVP, and he should be America's MVP.
I am so sorry. Anthony, Ron, Steve, Paul, you just won the night. Anybody who references Fred Rogers is a winner. All right.